TLDR, the high-grade Nightingale is broadly the same price as an expensive master-grade kit, weighs at least slightly over half a kilo, and while it's beautiful to look at, the fly in the ointment is the loose pieces. That is going to be an handful. What is going on, guys? MJ2005 Gundam here, and today I'm going to be reviewing the high-grade Universal Century Nightingale from Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack, Beltorchika's Children. But before I begin, excuse the change of scenery as my usual desk is not large enough to accommodate the kit and the camera for any good shots. Also, a big shout out to my friend who lent me this kit for a review, because if it weren't for them, this review won't have been possible. However, because it's a borrowed kit, I could not tell you how it feels like to build nor its complexity. In spite of that, I could gather from the instructions that the parts count and undergating are extremely high for a high grade, resulting in a rather involved build. However, some parts either have undergates on seamline channels like the thigh armor, or very large ones like on the shield, so it definitely takes extra effort to circumvent the weird engineering, and overall, it is definitely targeted to the more intermediate builders and beyond. What I can confirm is that the product is superb out of the box. While it sports a boastful appearance due to its sheer size, it has the color separation to show for it as well. From the orange on the inner edges of the thrusters, to the white verniers on the chest, skirts, and its
gentleman sausage.
And even the Vulcan barrels on the chest, the grey vents on the head with the vent details, and the grey circles on the collar. Bandai has gone all out with the color separation, and while stickers are used for the eye, chest verniers, the insides of the thrusters, and the orange inner edges of the shell, they are subtle details that don't detract what's already there. There are also red stripes on the fuel tanks bundled with the insignia stickers, and honestly, they all help break up the surface monotony, as there is barely any surface detail compared to the undersides. There are also leftover decals for you to use to your own liking. You still need to paint in the insides of the smaller thrusters for 100% accuracy, clean up the horrible seam lines on the arms and fuel tanks, and probably gloss it up just to make it look like the initial CG render, but otherwise it looks stupendous right out of the box. However, while it looks spot on to the line art, the back thrusters have discrepant sizes, as the ones in the binders should be much smaller, while the ones on the core backpack should be larger. As it is right now, the binders can induce trypophobia into more squeamish people like me, but I guess the design liberty doesn't hurt all that badly, as it fills in as much space in the binders as possible. Standing at about 17 cm to the top of the head, and 21 cm to the top of the binder if you place them flatly, and more notably 40.8 cm wide, and poking 29 cm towards the back, it easily eats up most high grades in terms of size, and takes up shell space as easily as Skull textbooks. Only the likes of the Penelope could ever come close to it, so even without the gloss coating, the Nightingale can easily draw attention from family members, guests, and especially that of dust particles. Articulation begins with a ball joint and a neck joint in the head, so it can do the funky chicken, makes sense because it's a bird, and despite the long head, it can still rotate off to the side 90 degrees before it gets caught in the shoulder armor, so the peculiar size doesn't necessarily affect the articulation. The shoulder flaps over here can move up 90 degrees to get out of the way of the arms. The arms can go out relatively far forwards, they can rotate all the way around, get clear of the wings because of the arm bend. The arms can go out basically perpendicular to the body. They can rotate above the elbow, bend at the elbow at two joints, which gives you this nice 135. And it can kind of rotate at the forearm as well. And the wrists are on very tight ball joints, which I really do like. Moving along now, we have a rotation at the lower body. Technically you can rotate it all the way around, and there is barely anything else because it's just a gigantic peg. Now front skirts are connected onto a ball joint so it can move, given that the side skirts can get out of the way as well because these are also pegged onto a ball joint, but because of their design they can't really move out of the way because they're designed to look flush to make this one cohesive design, which I really do appreciate, but it does hinder the articulation and stability for a little bit. And also, its wedding vegetable can actually move to move the front skirts up even further. Post your innuendos in the comments below. But this gigantic turtle shell on the back doesn't move at all. Moving on to the sub arms that are clipped into this bracket over here, you can simply rotate them and tug them along the track to deploy them. Now you can rotate them at the rail over here, you can rotate them over here. You have a double swivel that can go 180 degrees each, and you do have the manipulator that can move 180 degrees and rotate. The fingers don't move, but that's neither here nor there. Moving on to the legs now, there aren't any unique mechanics in there, but it's interesting to note that the legs are bent slightly. Now it is a very unique characteristic of the Nightingale so as to not make it look weird, and for it to handle the cumbersome load on the top, and of course for the turtle shell to act as a pod. But anyways, the legs can go forwards this far, backwards basically nothing, off to the side this far, rotation at the hip, and a double jointed knee until it hits 90 degrees. Can't expect much more from a bulky leg like this. And finally, the leg armor over here can move up, so the feet can go forwards and back, a little bit of side to side, and a little bit of rotation. This toe can move down, and these two can move down as well, so as to clamp onto very thick branches if it ever perches on a tree. Moving on to the basket mechanics, you can also move this pod over here just to collapse it whenever you store it, and these fuel tanks can be popped out just in case you do store the actual support leg over here, and they are on a pivot in the center. And what's good about the fuel tanks is that there's a hole here which allows a tab inside of the shell to connect into, so as to lock them into place and prevent them from falling unintentionally, because they are quite heavy. Moving on to the nightmarish binders now, you can actually swivel them forward and back at the base as if it was flapping its wings. You can also rotate them, and over here you do have an adjustable joint, and you can flap in and out. And this is the problem of the backpack. The fuel tanks over here are actually on ball joints, so they can move about, but one simple knock and they just go flying. Same thing goes for the thrusters inside of the binders, and I'm sorry if you have trypophobia, but I have to show this because these don't move at all. But they can be so easily moved that one simple knock can knock out a thruster. So it's best to glue these on since they're static anyways, but it is also recommended that you tighten up the ball joints of these fuel tanks. Articulation of the Nightingale is definitely what you would expect from a bulky design like this, but because of its bulk, it doesn't really make too drastic of visual changes whenever it tries to pull up pose. Also, there are some loose pieces that can make the whole process more frustrating, so definitely fix those up during the build. For gimmicks, the front of the helmet is on a double hinge, so you can shift it up and move the eye before collapsing it again to be petrified by its stare. You can also see the basketball cockpit behind the eye, so that's really touchy of Bandai. Moreover, you can stow away the support gear by sliding it out of the shell and back in with the alternate lock. In doing so, it provided the shell with a thick peg you can plug into an Action Base 4 to support the back, while the front load is supported by another stand. You need 2 stands in total, yet this kit has none included. Absolute bummer. For accessories then, you get a pair of fists, holding hands, a right angled trigger finger hand, and a left open hand, each with their own hand covers thankfully. For weapons then, starting with the abdominal beam cannon. Just flip the armor piece down to deploy it, and give yourself a nightmarish smile to look at. Secondly, you get the large mega beam rifle with a green sticker for the scope, plenty of surface detail, a length that surpasses a Gundam's height, and a bipod that can be deployed and adjusted without any parts forming. Simply plug the rifle into the trigger finger hand for use with a snugly grip to boot, and the angle on the holding hand allows you to tuck the huge stock under the armpit with ease. Moving on, we have 4 beam sabers, 2 with flat holes and 2 with round holes. 2 of them can be stored under the front skirts held by the sub-arms, and while you can't store all of them, you can use all of them with the included Sinanju beams, or SB1 beams. Stick 2 of them into the hands while deploying the sub-arms for the other 2 and run wild. Next, we have the Giant Shield, and it is large enough for the core Gundam to go kayaking in the rapid rivers. Sticker for the Zeon insignia aside, everything from the surface vents to the underside panel and micro missiles are all color separated. You can plug it onto the underside of the left arm and adjust it with its ball joint, or shift the shield onto the underside if that's what you fancy. Stored under the shield is the beam tomahawk. You can simply pull it out and bring in either the small or large axe effect parts, or the large axe saber combo effect part, and slide it into the hand for a not so tight grip. The small axe blades look laughably small on the Nightingale, but the large effect parts don't help it that much either. Finally, you have the funnels on the binders, and it is worth mentioning the energy coil details left behind when you take out the funnels do fill in what would otherwise be an empty port nicely. Unfortunately, the funnels have a peg that is slightly larger than 3mm underneath, so annoyingly, you need to be crafty to display them separately, and even craftier if you want to use the figurized jet effects on them. I couldn't figure out how the guys at the Gundam base attach them so seamlessly, so do educate me in the comments below on how to better achieve the effect. But I bet your ass that a P Bandai set like that for the Re100 would appear in the near future. To conclude, it has a boastful appearance with a lot to show for it. Color separation is way beyond what to expect for a high grade, it looks spot on to the line art apart from the thruster sizes if you want to be pedantic, and it is menacing. Surface detail is a bit lacking, but that makes for a cleaner aesthetic on such a large rounded surface. There is a low amount of awful seam lines, but overall, it's definitely a looker that transcends its grade. It's rather posable for such a cumbersome and bulky model kit, but the lower body movement is more or less unnoticeable, so you may consider this a brick from the waist down. However, some parts are looser than I like, and often you'll knock something off while posing and it is frustrating to deal with it. But hey, at least those issues are easy to fix. I can't comment on the build, but the high parts count and odd gate placement is more than enough reason to gain some experience before tackling with this big bird. But it is not too sophisticated for its own good, and in fact, all the mechanics from the eye to the sub-arms are well implemented, so it's definitely an enjoyable kit to put together and admire the inner mechanics. Being priced at 7,000 yen without tax and suffering from shortage due to the large demand, it is made with love for Char and Nightingale fans. Those who are casual fans like me are to decide for themselves if it's worth the investment, but if you're looking for a good Nightingale kit, it is definitely worth the investment, and the straight build presentation shows. Overall, it averages an 8.5 out of 10. And while this is recommended strongly to those who are looking for one, it is a heavy investment. So make sure this bird won't be the harbinger of your wallet's death. Otherwise, knock yourself out if you want one. Just make sure to fix the issues while you're at it. And that wraps up this review, so thank you all so much for watching this video. If you did like it, please be sure to drop a like, comment, and also subscribe for more Gunpla reviews, Gunpla news, and all that kind of stuff. Turn on notifications for future content alerts if you haven't, and I'll see you all in the next video. Hang loose and peace out.